What's going on, guys? On this week's podcast, we have the continuation. Last week, you saw her on The Elite Agent. This week, she's on the Handsome Homebuyer podcast. We have Pat Yovino, the legend, 30 plus years in the business, top producer, 30 plus years out of Keller Williams. Check it out. Yeah, kid. Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Handsome Homebuyer podcast. My name is Charles, aka the Handsome Homebuyer, aka Captain Permit, aka
El Judío Maravilloso,
aka the fourth one, El Chulo de las Casas. Shout out to Catherine Trent for that. I'm gonna give her credit this time. After that, I'm gonna credit myself. We got a legend in the building. But before we go there, Levy, do you know who has also become a legend in a year and a half?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Camper.
Captain Permit, that's right. 516-513-8838. If you need plans, you need permits, you need anything real estate related, tip to tip, coast to coast, and by that, I mean Queens, not in Queens, but the Queens-Long Island border, all the way out to Montauk. Interior alterations, legalizations, new constructions. Listen, the towns are awful. Our guest today will attest to that. They're awful.
Yes, they are.
You didn't think they could get any worse? Oh, wait, they're getting worse. 6 months, 4 months, 9 months, 11 months. New York the Northeast collectively now has the longest permit process in the country at 11.3 months. Do you believe that?
That's insane. That's crazy.
It's madness, but we're here to hold your hand and wipe every tear through that insane permit process. 516-513-8838. And obviously, if you have a house that smells like cat pee, is dated from the 1960s, 6 inches of mold on the wall, human waste floating past the basement steps, land, commercial property, non-performing notes.
You are their guy.
I'm quick. I'm easy. Today's guest knows I'm a good time. I want to buy it. 516-777 sold. All right. You're like, what did I get myself into?
That was your commercial, huh?
I didn't. You're like, I didn't know when I met you 7 years ago that you were going to be a maniac. So today's guest literally is a legend in the space, right? Been in it for 30 plus years. We don't need to talk about exactly how long, but basically, and she'll explain that she started doing real estate when they delivered these, I don't even know what she's talking about, delivered these books with these perfs, and you had to rip them out with the town and put them into a binder. But she was the listing agent that essentially sold me my first fix and flip house, which started the trajectory of the madness that is my current life, and I'm very grateful for that. She's been a top producer for decades, and don't take that as a bad thing.
I'm not.
You look fantastic.
Thank you.
You have more energy than the average 19-year-old, and you're growing every day. She just started her new team, the Yovino team. Pat Yovino, Keller Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to see you again.
Yes, you too, Charles.
It's great to see you. So, you've seen it all, you've done it all.
Pretty much.
I'm kind of curious to know, and you've seen, so you started real estate before, I don't even think, before computers were big, so you've seen it really evolve. You've also been through every kind of market that there is.
Yes, I have.
And you've lasted through that. I'm actually curious to know how you first got into real estate.
Wow, that's an interesting story. Okay, so I went to Nassau Community College and I wanted to be an art teacher, but they told me there was no opportunities left, in that all the classes were filled by the time I got there. So I was like, well, what do I do? And they said, well, you could be, a rocket scientist, or you could be a gym teacher.
Were they being serious?
At Nassau Community. Or you could do fashion merchandising, which was similar to art.
Okay.
So I said, okay, that's the one, because that's how I am. So I said, I'll do that. So I got an associate's degree in fashion merchandising, and at the last semester, you had to do a work-study program in the city.
Okay.
They threw me into a crazy, it's called a buying house in the city, in the garment district. I hated every single person I dealt with. They were all liars and thieves, and I was just like, I can't do this.
This is not
I was
for
so
me.
young, and, I wasn't jaded, and I was like, they say they're sending stuff, but they're not sending stuff. What do I do? And, I just realized that the garment center wasn't for me. So I had been bartending the whole time.
No kidding.
To earn a living. Yep. I'd been bartending for a while. And one of my regulars in the bar that I worked in Levittown, was a local place called Brothers Pub. You may all remember it. And he came in and he was a realtor. And he worked at Dallow Realty around the corner.
Okay.
And he said, so what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I hate what I went to school for. I can't do that job. It's just not for me. And he said, you're smart. Go get your real estate license. I was like, what does that entail?
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history. I got my license, and that was back in 1979, and I was very young. So
you did just date yourself. You realize that,
I
right?
know. It's okay. I was very young. I really was. And then I did that for a few years, and then the interest rates got so high that contracts used to say that if the interest rate should exceed 16 or 16.5%, this contract is null and void. So purchasers did not qualify anymore because it was very strict qualifications back then for getting a mortgage loan.
So just stop right there for a second, only because I want all the younger generation who's listening to this to understand for a minute. So you got into real estate, and then as soon as you did, it was like 1982, 83 when I got out because the rates had skyrocketed so high. I think it was around there. So people are complaining now when rates like come up above like 3%.
Crazy.
What were the rates like at that time and what was going on?
There was, you could get a variable rate for 15, 16%, which was no guarantee. It wasn't locked in for the life of the loan. They had, 1 or 2 points over that it could go up to and or below. Or you could lock into a fixed rate up to 17.5%. And some people did, because if you had to buy a house, you were buying at 16, 17, 17.5%. It was crazy.
What did that do to the market, due to values? Like, what was like just the overall economy?
Well, that was
like
the time of, the Carter administration and inflation. So where you were paying it in the mortgage, you were also getting it on the CDs. So it was kind of a weird time because we had runaway inflation, and the price of houses from the early 80s to the end, which was when the market crashed in 89, they were skyrocketing at 20% a year. Prices were going up so fast that if you bought a house in 1980 or 81 and you sold it in 88, you tripled your money. That's how crazy it was back then.
Kind of sounds a little bit like what's going on right now. Just saying.
A little bit, but I don't think it's gone up that much. I mean, it's gone up dramatically recently because of the pandemic, but it hasn't gone up like it did in the mid 80s. The mid 80s was nuts. And the interest rates eventually started to come down.
Yeah.
And so that boosted that again, because now people felt like, oh my God, I could get, 13%. So let me run out and buy a house. So it was interesting. It was interesting. It was a weird time, but I got out of real estate for 10 years. Almost 10 years.
I did not know that.
Yes. I got out of real estate for almost 10 years. I did that for a short stint, but I was in need of money. And when the interest rates shot up that first time and all those contracts died, I had 11 deals go down in one day. And I was like, well, I'm done with this business and off to the next thing. And I worked in the car business. I sold numerous different things over the years and, had to make a living. So I got out. And then in 1992, I was married. I had 3 children, and I needed to really get back into the workforce. And there really wasn't a lot of options for, a mom of 3 small children, and I was juggling taking care of them. So as much as I couldn't believe I was saying it, I thought, maybe I'll get my real estate license back. I can't believe I'm going back to this business that stabbed me in the heart,
Let me ask you a question, because you kind of went over it very nonchalantly, but there's like the pretty big message for that in this, is that you kind of have this attitude, which is what has led you to be very successful, is you just get stuff done. You're not
just do it.
You're not emotionally like really heavily impacted. Like somebody in a situation where they had 11, the average person with 11 deals in contract who lost them all would sit in a corner and cry for months. But you're just like, all right, on to the next one. Like you have this drive that has essentially kept you top of the game for 40 years.
Not that long.
Well, okay, 30 years. 30 years since you returned. Where does that come from?
Need. I didn't grow up with money.
That's interesting.
So never really had extra cash in our family. We were, making it. I had food, I had housing, but we never had money for anything. So I started working when I was 12. And my dad had a little store in Jamaica, and I sold sneakers and ice skates and fishing tackle and Lionel trains, HO trains, paint by number. I mean, it was the craziest store. They had so much different basketballs, footballs. I mean, like, it was a crazy store.
Yeah.
And every Saturday, because we had blue laws then, you didn't work on Sunday. Every Saturday, every holiday, I worked in the store, and I made like my little $10, $15, $20, whatever my father was able to give me that day. And I saved my money and would buy things. So I learned to work to get what I wanted.
It's so valuable though, right?
There's no replacing that. When you don't have money and you know what it is to make money and appreciate it, everybody who gives their kids everything, it's a wonderful thing, but at the same time, if they don't know what it's about, they don't appreciate it. So
like I said to my parents maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and they kind of looked at me like, I can't believe you just said that. But I worked very hard because I saw my dad worked 6-7 days a week my entire life. But I was also very fortunate, and I grew up in South Wantagh, and I never, had a need for something that I didn't. I went to summer camp, I played travel hockey, all this stuff. And I said to my parents one day, I'm like, I really wish you would have not given me so much. Like, I wish you would have made me struggle more.
why?
To your exact point.
But you are a hard worker, and you do appreciate what you have, and you strive for more. So you were one of the few people
I got lucky.
that really was given everything, but still, got to understand life, and working hard brings you the riches you want for what you want.
Yeah.
So you do that. So you got that lesson because
Thank
you
you.
watched your dad.
Yeah.
I have to say I have 3 children, obviously adults now, and they were all hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that they got the same message from me because they saw me have to take care of them and work hard and always be available and answer phones and
Yeah.
emails and beepers and whatever it was over
Yeah.
the years. I know, right? And then they learned that hard work is the way to get ahead and to
Yeah.
take care of yourself, because the most important gift you can give your children is love and independence.
Without a doubt. And
that's it. That's
and
it.
we collectively, your kids and I, like we got lucky because we saw that, because I'm sure we had a lot of opportunity because my parents and you worked so hard because you didn't want us to go through what you went through growing up and what he
Correct.
went through growing up. Mm-hmm. But I see a lot of my contemporaries not the same.
Right.
Like, they don't achieve a certain level of success because they don't have the drive, they don't have that fire because it wasn't instilled to them.
Because they don't have the need.
And their parents are still paying like their cell phone bills and they're 42 years old.
God.
So that's the thing. And that's why being a parent is very scary. I don't have kids yet. And that's one of those things where I'm like, it's hard. You're doing a good job and there's no manual for that.
You committed to this business. I don't know if you're ready to commit to the other aspect of life yet. So
Yeah, but you did it all.
I don't. I have no idea how.
Yeah, it couldn't have been easy.
Autopilot the whole way. I have no idea how. Just keep going. Never look back. Just keep going forward.
So talk about your return to real estate. So you're out for 10 years, you come back in. What's the What's the climate like?
Well, in '92, the market had turned. Obviously, the '80s were over. In '89, the market had dropped. So prices had come down, and I would say it was a pretty even market. It wasn't a seller's market anymore. It was more of turning towards a buyer's market. It was a buyer's market for a little while, but pretty even. And I got in, and I just cared about making money because at that point in time, I needed to make money. I needed the money. It wasn't because I went back to work with twins that were 5 and a baby that was 3 that I wanted to go back to work. I had to, financially. So again, the need to pay the mortgage, to feed the kids, to get the sneakers, whatever they needed. So I went back, and it was crazy. I would get 2 hours in the morning. I would run in. I'd try to get the overnight ups of buyers, because in those days they were a little pink pieces of paper that the notes would be on. The secretary would empty the voicemail, and so I would run in, and because you were the first one there, you would get the ups. So I would be the first one there.
Why do they call them the ups?
We had an upboard.
Okay.
An upboard is just like names on a board that get rotated. So if you hit the bottom, you get the next phone call in. You know, things
Got
were
it.
different then. We didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that. So if you wanted to talk to a realtor, you called the real estate agency and you got in touch with the realtor. So there was a rotating board of names that would slide in and out. And you would, if you got to the bottom, you got the next up, which was a client, a potential customer. And if you got the overnight ups, sometimes there were 2 or 3. So you had to be the first one in, and I would be there at 9:00, and I would get as many as I could, and I would start calling people. And the first year back, I sold 11 houses, made up for those 11 I lost.
Nice.
Yep. And it was, you know, just the beginning. And then I started to, and then in 98, I was salesperson of the year for the first time. And in 99, I couldn't earn any money. Everything had changed. It kept changing. People were starting to not be loyal. The market was starting to become a seller's market again. So people weren't as loyal to their realtors again.
Okay.
And whereas I used to have great relationships and people would, you know, I would say, if you see anything on multiple listing, if you see anything in the newspaper, just call me. I'll tell you what it is and I'll handle it for you. Things were changing. And
Was that because of the internet or?
It wasn't the internet as much yet. No, the internet wasn't a player yet, but things were changing. Just like the computers had come out actually in the 80s, but they were read only. They were, you know, like a printer. We didn't know what the hell that was. And by the late 90s, they were starting to have programs on a screen that you could look at, but not interactive. Yeah. It was just information.
This is so crazy.
I know. But you know, that's what it was in the late 90s. And then it continued to evolve and evolve. But the clientele was very desperate at that point. They were starting to get desperate for houses, and the market was starting to rise again. Because, you know, you think the late 90s ended up at 2006 with the banking crisis. So things were on the rise and people weren't that loyal. And I took off a few months because I was just burnt out. And I decided during that time frame that I was going to list. I was done.
Oh, you were working exclusively with buyers?
I know. I was doing both. But I decided that if it's a hot market, let's concentrate on sellers, because sellers, once you get that signature, you're almost guaranteed to make money.
Yeah,
and stop running around and making myself crazy and having people disappoint me. So I focused my business towards listings. Not that I didn't take buyers, because you always have, you know, a balance.
Yeah, of course.
But if I was 65% buyers prior to this epiphany, then I switched it and it became like 70% sellers and 30% buyers.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because I knew that was the future. And I went out, I knocked on doors. I worked in another company. We used to drop off little gifts like plants and promotional things on their front doorstep. I did all of that legwork, and I just focused on sellers, because that was guaranteed money.
I have 2 questions. First of all, I don't think the general public realizes how hard it is to be a realtor and how you're essentially like on your own island running your own business. You have a broker, but like for all intents and purposes, like you're on your own.
Yeah, it's 1099. It's straight commission. No salaries. No gas money. No health insurance. Nothing. It's straight commission. And so you don't make a sale. You don't earn anything.
I feel like today, like a really frustrating thing for agents, and I would be frustrated if I was an agent, is agents who will have a listing will get a call from a buyer, and they'll show the house and all this stuff, and then after that they'd be like, "Oh yeah, my agent is going to put the offer in." And he'd be like, "Where's your agent been? Like, you didn't tell me you had an agent the whole 9." I'm curious to know how the service aspect of the business has changed from when you started to now, because I had heard stories like the agent used to pick people up, actually bring them around in the car, the whole 9. Like, it was a very, very different animal.
Totally different. You know, just to avoid things like that, I always ask the question, are you working with an agent? because I have been,
That would drive me nuts.
I have been in that situation more than once.
Yeah.
And it is so frustrating. You know, I the first time it happened, I did an open house. I had a couple come. They looked at the house for an hour. They were at my open house for an hour, asked 1,000 questions. I answered all their questions. He called me an hour after I closed up and said, "Can I bring my uncle back?" Now it's like 4:30 on a Sunday. It's the winter. It's freezing cold out. I said, "When?" He said, like 5:30. I said, "Sure, no problem." You know, life of a realtor, drop everything, go.
Yeah.
So I went. I showed it to the uncle. I went back home. It was a Sunday. Football was on. I remember I was watching football. And the phone rings, and it's this guy's agent. And he says, "I'm going to make an offer for, Joe and Sally Smith." And I was like, "Excuse me?"
I would lose my mind.
I did. I lost my mind. There was a little yelling going on. Didn't matter. They were loyal to him.
Yeah.
They hadn't signed anything with me, so they were loyal to him. So he ended up selling the house. And I did all the legwork to get them to that point.
This is like a common agent problem. How do you, outside of that, because how can you prepare for this? Are there like disclosures and things?
There are disclosures.
Yeah.
There are disclosures that you can have them sign, and you're supposed to have them sign. It was a long time ago. It was a lot more loosey goosey. Now everything is very strict.
Yeah.
So you need to have fair housing. You need to have Department of State, which talks about agency. And if I had been probably more diligent with that, because you have to look at yourself and say, what did I do wrong? Because obviously I did. I didn't ask them if they had an agent back then. It was a long time ago. And I didn't have them sign that, paperwork that they should have signed when they walked into the open house and started discussing the house with me. And if I had, I would have known.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have wasted my time. So it was my fault in the end, which is, why I put the deal together, because I worked for the seller, not for myself. And I learned, though, I never did that again. You have people sometimes that are dishonest and don't say that they have an agent when you say, "Do you have an agent? Are you working with someone?" And they say no, and then their cousin calls me. Well, that's different. That was my fault the first time, but now I tell my girls and my team, always ask, do they have an agent?
Yeah.
Always. And then if you're showing houses, you should have your Department of State disclosure form filled out, with the fact that you are working for the seller.
So I think something important to also talk about, and other successful people that I know or that have been on the podcast do the same thing, which is you have ultimate accountability, which is rare for people. So you're like, everything's my fault, which is a big deal. Like if something goes bad, it's ultimately my fault. Like if anything goes bad in my business, it is 100% my fault.
Right.
And then you're constantly like assessing your business, the market, and how you can get better and change.
Correct. So what's the question?
No, I'm putting that out to the people that are listening, because a lot of people, hit me up and DM me and call me and like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Like, why are these people successful? Why are you successful? And these are really the traits. They're like these universal traits for people who are successful in what they have. And you're demonstrating a lot of them. So I just kind of want to point them out as we go through this. That was my point. So what was it like going through 2008 to 2012? Was that the craziest? Because you went through high inflation, you went through the savings and loan crisis, and now you went through COVID, and then before that you went through the craziest,
which was like a recession
of all time.
I don't think that was, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I had built up my business successfully, and even though my income may have adjusted in 2007, 8, 9, it was never bad. I never couldn't make my bills. I never got foreclosure notices again, because that's how I got back into real estate. But no, I had built it and I worked it, and my reputation is everything. So I try to give everybody honest information, service. So even though people were struggling and dropping out of this business, I was still working, because even though things were not good, houses were still selling.
Yeah.
Not as many houses, lots of short sales. That was a whole nightmare, but you loved it, right? You got in with the situations, right? You just
I wasn't
starting
in at that time. Like,
you didn't get in at the point where things were really kind of low. Like,
no, I met you
what year was it?
literally at like the start of my career, which was like,
2013, 14.
yeah, it was like 7
Oh,
years
so
ago.
it was already,
So I
it was
missed
already
that.
on the rebound.
Yeah, it was already starting to.
But there was still short sales and foreclosures and.
Oh yeah, there
and-
still are today.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
It's
As a
just not as many. There was a lot of people upside down, and it was sad.
Yeah, that was a
It
different
was
ballgame.
sad dealing with those people. I felt bad for them.
The crazy part of it is, and I kind of tested a few markets. There's about 60% of the houses that were underwater that were originated during that 05, 08 period that are still underwater, that still haven't been flushed out, believe it or not.
Yeah, I don't really understand, but I know that the banks are holding on to a lot of inventory, and I really understand the backstory on that, why they're still holding it, because they have, taxes that have to be paid, because all tax liens come before all other liens. So the taxes are being paid on a lot of properties by these banks, and I'm not really sure what's going on, but I don't feel like they've released every house, and there's plenty of them out there that.
Yeah, I have the answer.
What is it?
They don't own the houses, but New York state law is so insane that, I mean, it takes on average 7 to 10 years for a house to move through the system.
Right.
Throw COVID in there, throw everything else. Then you also have, like, there are attorneys. I went on the podcast not that long ago. I mean, he's a brilliant man, but if you go to an attorney, you have the ability to lock these things up for even longer. Like, I've short saled a house. I've purchased a house through a short sale where the person hadn't paid in 18 years.
Oh my goodness.
If you go to like Alabama or Texas or any of these other states, that stuff doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
30 days, like 60 days, you're out. So it's basically, it's the New York court system. That's
crazy.
That's what it is. And a lot of lenders have shied away from lending in New York for that reason. They just don't want to do deals there.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's just, it's very tough. And that's why. I mean, you have, in that period of time, you had a big spike of default, but you always have constant default. I mean, New York is a very expensive place to live. I think people over leverage.
Yeah.
And usually when they're buying a house, it's when they're doing their best and then something happens and they're overextended.
Yeah, that's true.
So it never goes away.
It really didn't make sense, a lot of what went on even during that time frame, because in 2008 was the Obama tax credit.
Okay.
And I had a property that went to contract as a short sale, and it was one man who owned it. He was not married. He had no children. And it went to contract. Bank of America was the main loan. There were two loans. They were the larger mortgage. So they were the first mortgagee. And I think I sold it, for $390. I'm going back a ways. It was $390. And after 7 months, they came back and said, we'll take $400. It was 7 or 8 months. And the buyer had lost out on getting that $8,000 because it had expired. And he told them to take a walk for $10,000. And at that time, the taxes were $15,000 on this particular house.
That's crazy.
And the man died. In the midst of this, he just had a heart attack and died. So it was in contract at $390. I think it was like 8 months later. I think it was. It's hard to remember now, but it was a long time ago. And the man died. So he wasn't paying it. He had no heirs to pay it.
Yeah.
And for $10,000, they told this veteran, he was a veteran, and he knew it was a VA loan, and they said, no, we want $400.
This is the bank you're talking about now, right?
Yeah, Bank of America.
Yeah.
And they told him no for $10,000, because he said, I'm not paying that. You made me wait all this time. I just lost $8,000, which I could have used. And then, if you came back with a quick answer, but they didn't. And that house sat there for 10 years, deteriorating, 10 years vacant.
Because the people that manage these...
That made no sense.
The people that manage these portfolios, it's not their money. And it's not like you and I having a conversation to work out a deal that makes sense.
Yeah.
They look on it at a giant portfolio scale. And again, it's not their money. It's like a pension fund money or whatever it is.
This is one house. How many houses did Bank of America have like that? You know what I'm
Tens of
saying?
hundreds of thousands.
And not just them. All of the big lenders. All
That's
of the
crazy.
big lenders. I'm not, pointing a finger at them. This went on in multiple homes. It's just an example.
Still does.
And I don't get it.
It still does. A lot of that doesn't make sense. But I mean, all that is for me, like I love seeing stuff like that, like with my new endeavor to take over the MLS, because when you see deficiencies in a market or a business, or somebody ultimately gets comfortable and they're like, we've been doing this forever, somebody who's younger and hungrier and has a better mousetrap can take over and make money.
Look at Bezos, who thought that we would buy everything on the internet.
Everything.
You know, it's like, it's so crazy.
Everything.
You know, find a need and fill it, or create one.
Exactly. I want to talk about the brand, right? So like branding, Pat Yovino is a brand. You know that, right?
Apparently.
You're a brand. So
apparently.
Now there's a lot of talk about on social media about brand building and social media and all that stuff, but like you built a brand before like building a brand was a thing.
Right.
And you did it without technology.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit, about how you went about, because you also, like I've seen you operate. Like I've seen you talk to sellers. It's like a symphony, right? It's just, you kind of dance through it and just charm them, win them over, and then, you get the listing. What was it like? What are the attributes? How did you market in a world pre-social media?
Advertising, a lot of advertising.
Okay.
A lot of door to door, a lot of
Like door knocking, door to door?
door knocking.
No kidding.
Yep. If I had a spare hour and the sun was out, didn't matter how many deals I had in contract, I would go out and knock on doors and speak to people and just introduce myself, you know, and now you see a lot of no solicitor signs, and sometimes I'll go out with one of the people on my team and they'll be like, it says no soliciting. I'm like, I'm not soliciting. Hi, just introducing myself, So it's not solicitation, because I'm not asking them to buy or sell anything. I'm just introducing myself. And sometimes, that is the best way to connect with people, is face to face. But I will tell you that I did a lot of advertising in local newspapers.
Yeah.
I would say, like you say, like from the Queens border.
Yeah.
All the way out to Montauk. I traverse the island now, whereas back when I was trying to start, more localized advertising just to build a brand, it was definitely more near the office and the surrounding area. So I did a lot of local paper advertising. So people would see my face and my name constantly. I advertised in gyms, 2 different gyms. They would have the banners going by. I would do that. I did. Right now, I'm on the golf course at Peninsula. I'm on their golf carts. I'm on a bench there. And then I am in the supermarket down on Sunrise Highway.
Yeah.
I still do a weekly ad in the South Bay, the local paper. Where else am I? Oh, I'm in the CVS. I'm in the CVS locally. So that was where I built the brand.
Yeah.
But because I built a business and people got to know me, they refer me.
Yeah.
And you always have to be in a nice way asking for referrals and let them know. Say, this is, if you were happy with the service I provided, if you know anybody who needs to buy or sell a home, please let me know, because I will provide the same service to them. And it's just word of mouth and your reputation. So you don't step on toes, you don't burn bridges, and you try to make everybody walk away from every single transaction happy. Buyer, seller, buyer, doesn't matter, happy.
Talk to me about the next iteration, which is the team. And did the team come out of COVID, or was it before that?
No, it was before.
It was before COVID.
As soon as I went to Keller Williams, it was one of the reasons that I went there. My old company was not up to date with things like that, and Keller, promotes teams and working together as a group, because it really is a wonderful way to grow your business, manage your business, and have a business within the business. As you said earlier, I'm on my own.
Yeah.
So Keller's whole, concept is the realtors building a business under the Keller name, which is a business. So business inside a business. So I wanted to start a team. That was one of the reasons I went there. And I got very fortunate, because I got some awesome people working with me that are, smart, driven, customer service skills, good-hearted. It's just to find the right people to fit into your niche and what you're looking for. I didn't want, anybody who's disreputable in any way, because I don't want them to tarnish the reputation that I built.
Of course.
So, but I got great people, and we work together very cohesively. We enjoy hanging out together, and they're all different ages, and it's great, because it's not like we even feel that. Nobody feels that. that were of different generations. When we talk about work, it's really just a very cohesive group, and it's wonderful. And I love it. And I'm teaching them because let's face it, I mean, I've taught a lot of people in this business over the years, and it was not to my benefit. It was just to help them.
Yeah.
So now it's actually helping them and benefiting me, because now I have other people that I can, delegate to, share my leads with, and we can all grow together.
Of course.
But
with that comes like a new set of challenges. Like, it's very different to be Pat Yovino operating as a one-woman show than it is to now, be delegating
share.
And training.
Yep.
And it's a very different skill set. I'm curious to know what's been the biggest challenge with you building the team so far?
I just want to give them all enough business so that they can be successful. So the pressure is on me to expand my lead generation, because that is the most important thing, that I have enough business to keep them all busy. I certainly have enough business to keep me busy, but I want to make sure that they're all successful. I'm not greedy about it. I feel like if they're successful, I'll be more successful. I will have more time to myself if I can share people with them, and they're helping. And I have to tell you, I get the most wonderful responses about my agents. I cannot say enough nice things about them, from the people that contact me, that want me. They get me, but they also get, let's say, one or two of my other agents working with them, and hands down, they all say, so professional, so pleasant to deal with, great person, this one, that one, doesn't matter. They all get wonderful reviews from the people that are in my sphere of influence, as we call it, like people that I've done business with, people that are reaching out to me because of my reputation, whatever the case might be. So
and
it's interesting. It's interesting. I love having the group. It's great. I
think it's notable also to mention that, like, you love what you do. You love real estate.
I do.
You do. You like real estate. You like a challenge. You like the action. You're literally getting up every day and doing what you want to do.
Yep.
Because as the Elite Agent drops today, right? And you're in that episode. And as we talked about a little bit there, I'm 41 years old, and most of my contemporaries in the 35 to 45 range are saying, like, I want to coast. Like, they've worked hard for 10 years, and they kind of want to, like, they're happy with the level of business that they're doing. Whereas
hopefully they're really successful.
Some of them are, some of them are not.
Because they're going to have a rude awakening in 5 or 10 years. They're going to be like, "Woo, we're out of money. What do we do now?"
Especially you've seen the market just basically disappear. Like, you've lived through that a number of times already, so you don't know. Like, it's good until it's not.
Right.
That's actually another point. Like, from a business aspect, I think a lot of real estate agents or even small business people, like, they're operating a business, but they're not really operating a business. Like,
they're just working. They're just working.
And the money comes in and it goes out.
Right.
But, like, they're not. What advice would you give agents in regards to, like, any type of, like, financial planning or structuring more like a business versus just, it's coming in one day, it's going out the next? Because you don't know when your next deal is going to be. I mean, you have a constant flow, but for a lot of agents, they don't.
Right. I would say call me. And I'd be happy to discuss it with you, because there are a lot of things that you can do to help yourself have a steady flow.
Yeah.
I was talking about knocking on doors before. That was something that I always implemented. Now, I'm not knocking on doors alone, so things are a little crazier out there now than when I used to do it a lot.
Yeah.
I would recommend taking a buddy. Don't knock on doors alone. But there are certain work ethics that you can implement. It didn't matter how many deals I had in the file. Didn't matter how many I put in contract. Obviously, there's follow-up and you have to work all of that. But I never cared about that. I still said, well, I've got a couple hours. Let me go knock on a couple of blocks. Let me go knock on doors. Let me go talk to people. Always be prospecting. This way you have that constant flow.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the financial side of it, there are definitely things that you should be doing to manage the money you get.
Yeah.
So if you really want to know how to do that, you can call me. 516-647-3569. You're not the only one who can say phone numbers.
There you go. Do it. Do it. I was going to make you do it at the end if you didn't do it, but you beat me to it. Last question. Actually, my last two questions are, you've been doing this for some time, but you got a lot left to go. What is the next 10 years look like? And then what is, for a new agent, somebody coming in who hasn't done this before and is coming into a very hot market like this, what advice would you give them?
It's a great time to get into real estate. Well, then any time is really a great time to get into real estate, but you better be ready. You better be ready. You better be ready to work hard. You better be ready to take a punch, and you better be ready to let it go. Because this business can beat you up if you let it. You need to make sure that you are not allowing disappointment to derail your goal of being successful. That is it.
Levy, make sure we do a time check on that because that's going to be a nugget. That's coming out.
Good.
And what does the next 10 years look like for the Yovino brand?
Go, go, go.
Go, 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 go.
Go, go, go. Just build the team, build up my agents, help them to become independent realtors, to the point where they can do anything. They can do anything as well as I can and help them. And to expand on my social media, because that's something that's not from my, generation. I didn't grow up with it. I have to keep adjusting and improving. So social media is definitely my goal to conquer, because at this point you need to have that. You need to be tech savvy in every regard. Otherwise, forget it. You're going to be left in the dust like an old dinosaur. So.
And it's right there
now.
Like it's
now.
It's been coming, but like it's the tipping point of, if you're not heavily putting out content at scale, your business will disappear in the next five years.
Absolutely. I agree.
And that is something that I would love to help you with if you need my advice or want my advice. You have my phone number already.
Yes, I do.
So I would love to help you if you
and
ever
I
need
appreciate this podcast interview, because this will help me get myself in that direction. Thank you, Charles.
You are a legend. You are the queen. I thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
Again, one more time, if you're an agent who's interested in working on a team, or if you're a buyer or a seller interested in working with you and the team, how do they get in touch with you?
516-647-3569. Call, text, no problem. Always available.
Obviously, I'm the Handsome Homebuyer. You have anything, cat pee smelling houses, mold filled houses, houses that are falling down, whatever it is, I want to buy it. 516-777 sold. The uglier the better, yes, but I'm not picky. And obviously, if you have any permit issues, the captain's always got you. 516-513-8838. That's a wrap.